Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are here on a Monday morning. Welcome into a Daily Faceoff Live as we kickstart a fresh week of the show, which, as always, is brought to you by Fountain Tire. They'll treat your vehicle like it's their vehicle, and that's why you can trust them, whether it's with new tires or maybe your engine has a little rattle. Stop into Fountain Tire today, and they'll sort you out. And right now, you can save up to $225 on a set of 4 select tires, including Goodyear, until December 14th, plus $50 more on any service of $150. Some restrictions apply. Visit fountaintire.com. I'm Tyler Yaremchuk, and that is not Frank Saravalli. He was in Toronto for All-Star Weekend. He's in Chicago, taping More Frankly Speaking. He's a busy man, which is why Colby Cohn slides in. Colby, what's up?
It's a good day, buddy. It's an important day in both my country and your country. Obviously, Veterans Day here, Remembrance Day in Canada. You were giving me a little bit of an education on what Remembrance Day exactly means in Canada. But an important day, really, to kind of step back and think about people who have done things that we should celebrate in both countries and really made the most selfless act that you can make, so you and me can sit here on a Monday and talk about hockey in front of our computer screens. So important to carry that with you really every day, but obviously today's the day we really celebrate it. So I think it's important to talk about that, Tyler.
Yeah, absolutely. To all those who served and sacrificed, we thank you. That's what this day is all about. And let's dig into the hockey talk, Cole. We're going to be joined by James Nichols in a little bit to talk about the New Jersey Devils and their start to the season. But first, let's start with Hockey Hall of Fame weekend. It was a really interesting class inducted this year to the Hall. You had Colin Campbell and David Poyle in the Builders category, Chrissy Wendell and Natalie Darwitz on the women's side. And for the NHL or pro players, it was Pavel Datsyuk, Shea Weber, and Jeremy Roenick. A really intriguing one. We're going to talk about Jeremy Roenick in a bit because he's your weekend warrior, to give a little spoiler there. But let's start with Pavel Datsyuk. When you hear that name, and man, what an absolutely deserving, like no question, first ballot Hockey Hall of Famer. But when you hear Datsyuk, what's the first thing that comes to your mind?
Scary. And I had the fortune or probably the misfortune of playing him not only in a preseason atmosphere when I was with Colorado, but actually in one of the very few regular season games that I did play in the National Hockey League. And I'll never forget, he had that stick that had all the holes in it, if you remember that stick.
Yep.
And I just remember asking friendly advice to Adam Foote, and kind of asking people about Datsyuk, and the best advice I got about playing against him was, when him or Zetterberg come on the ice, just do yourself a favor, try to change as quick as you can. So the guy was just a force to be reckoned with on both sides of the puck. I think we forget how good he was defensively and how much of a 200-foot player he was. An easy pick for the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, nicknamed the Magic Man, made his debut back in 2001. For me, he was in that era of like the first players I was ever like watching on YouTube and pulling up the highlight reels and all of that, and just absolutely filthy. Like as soon as you hear his name, I think every hockey fan automatically starts to think about like 4 or 5 goals where it's like, oh yeah, that one was sick. I remember the flip over Turco in the penalty shot or in the shootout where he had, one of the best goalies of all time flailing around and helpless, but that is exactly what Pavel Datsyuk could do.
Could you imagine Pavel Datsyuk in today's game where you can't defend, really? I know I'm exaggerating a little bit, but imagine him, playing through this era of speed and skill. Wow.
Yeah, it would be something with a little bit less clutching and grabbing and all of that. The other name to zero in on here is Shea Weber. What stands out to me, Ultimate Warrior, obviously a lot of memories for me of watching him represent Team Canada throughout his career. And again, when you think of Warrior and you think of that run he went on, there was the playoff run he went on with the Nashville Predators, but then there was also the one in Montreal. Eric Engels had a tweet of Shea Weber. He played through the 2021 Cup run with a torn meniscus, a busted ankle, torn thumb tendons. He tore his groin in the Vegas series. How did he go through it? Weber said, taped it up. I was a mummy, but he was willing to do anything to try win a Stanley Cup. He gets in with a really good international resume in terms of championships on that side. No Stanley Cup for Shea Weber, but still one of the best defensemen that kind of defined that generation.
He still has an active contract in the National Hockey League, too. I just want to point that out. So a little bit of an odd circumstance to see him go in when he's still I guess technically on paper has, active has a contract in the National Hockey League.
Yeah, it is. It is a little bit of a weird one. He still looks like he could play. I saw him in the hallway in Montreal talking to Lane Hudson, and I was like, man, if you had to make me guess which one of those two was going to be in the lineup that night, I would have said Weber.
Well, that'd be a hell of a defensive pair, wouldn't it? Wow, those two probably do pretty well together.
Yeah, that is a good point. We're going to continue talking Hall of Fame in a bit with our Weekend Warrior segment, but let's get to what happened on the ice this weekend, Colby, and it's the Winnipeg Jets who just keep on humming. The first team in NHL history to win 14 of their first 15 games. They are first in goals for, first in goals against. They are doing everything right now. Connor Hellebuck, a big reason why he's only allowed 1 goal against in his last 3 starts. But anyways, the Jets make history with a statement win over a division rival in Dallas. Like, they aren't taking advantage of some sort of soft schedule here. They're going up against really good teams and continuing to win pretty handedly as well. 4-1 victory over Dallas, 4 different goal scorers as well. Has this Jets team convinced you? Like, I mean, how can you not say it? They've won 14-15. They're a cup contender, Colby.
They are a cup contender. And, I talked about this morning on Morning Cup of Hockey a little bit. And I want to start by giving credit to Scott Arniel. I really do, because this was a decision that I questioned when they made that hire. I just didn't think it was enough, right? And I think the internet agreed, right? And the internet's always right. I think we know that. And when I look at the way that this team is playing, I look at the details, right? And I, again, for those of you who are with us on Morning Cup of Hockey, I'm sorry that I'm repeating myself a little bit, but the one area that just glaringly sticks out to me, watch how hard they go back on pucks. And this is one of the reasons, Tyler, God bless you, that they don't spend time in the defensive zone, because their breakout is so efficient. And you watch, no matter what the circumstance is, no matter if the team they're playing is in an aggressive 2-1-2 or an aggressive 1-2-2, or if it's a passive 1-2-1 or excuse me, 1-2-2, whatever forecheck that's coming their way, you watch the way they retrieve the puck, their defensemen's habits of getting hard back on pucks, not just first defenseman on the strong side, but the weak side. And that allows them to get their feet up ice and play north faster than any other team in the National Hockey League. And we hear this play fast, play fast. Like, that is probably the biggest buzzword in the National Hockey League. You don't hear everybody say think fast, think fast, think fast, right? Your feet, everybody can skate in the National Hockey League. You've got to have the mind to keep up with it and the habits to keep up with it. And you watch how they get back on pucks. Like, I'm going to give all the credit in the world to their D-core for this success, because they're not having to defend. Their forwards are scoring a lot of goals. Their power play has been tremendous. We looked at a couple of their power plays this morning on Morning Cup of Hockey. The puck movement is absolutely tremendous. But to me, a lot of this credit goes to Scott Arniel and the details in which this team is playing early in the season.
Yeah, and for me, like, doing it and playing in a way that I really didn't think they could. Like, you look at this blue line and it's like, it's good, but I wasn't like, oh man, full of puck movers. Like you said, they're going to be able to get the puck up the ice quick. You look at their forward group and I was kind of like, oh, what's the offensive upside of this group of 12 players? But they're just doing it with depth, and their power play's been great. It's first in the NHL too. You look at this list here, whole bunch of guys up around that point per game mark. It's been a wildly impressive start. And I think if you're a Jets fan, maybe the only reason to be a little concerned is, man, the team that starts this hot rarely is the one who finishes the job.
Mm-hmm. Look, I think I said that this morning as well. I remember being in Chicago and having to see them in the Central Division, pretty frequently, right, as a broadcaster. And the team you saw in sometimes October, November, December was not the team you saw, February and March. And that is cause for concern. But again, yes, they're hot. And this will not last. They're not going to win every game all season. But if they can have the details, Tyler, I don't think they go on that 6 or 7 game losing streak that we've been accustomed to seeing them go through in the middle of the season. So this definitely feels a little bit different. I'm sure they're going to be active and try to add to their team because of how well they've played. They deserve that. But you're right. It is probably a little too early to see your team peaking at the top of the league.
Yeah, let's continue along to more drama in Philadelphia. We talked about it last week. It was like, whoa, the Flyers healthy scratching Matvei Michkov, a team that's struggling to score, sitting their super rookie who has 10 points in 13 games. And then Tortorella doubles down after they win the one game without Michkov. Tortorella doesn't mess with the winning lineup. So Matvei Michkov, healthy scratched for 2 consecutive games, Colby. This is an interesting one. For me, I think where the Flyers are at, you play the kid through it and you try to coach him through it. I don't think this is the right move. I think you're struggling to score. You're struggling to play an entertaining brand of hockey. I don't get it. Are you on my side or Torts' side?
I'm not on your side on this one, Tyler. I understand what you're saying, and I understand fans want to see a guy they can be excited about, but I think sometimes the adults in the room have to step up and make unpopular decisions. And I don't think this is just a John Tortorella decision. I think this is a decision that goes up the ladder. I think Keith Jones, Danny Briere, two people who know what they're doing, they know their way around this league, have to sign off on. And I'll just tell you this, when you really watch him and you watch him 5-on-5, to me, he's just surviving, right? And when you have a teenager who just played rookie camp, rookie games, training camp, preseason games, and then the first slate, right? We'll call it the first little bunch of games the National Hockey League. He is running on purely adrenaline. Those preseason games, he played like it was the Stanley Cup, Game 7, every one of those games. It is not uncommon to see a young player hit a wall, okay? It is not uncommon. The schedule's different. The physicality's different. Early on, 5-on-5, he was getting to the net. He was getting inside the dots. Lately, to me, he's not winning those wall battles. He's a step slow to the net. He just looks tired, right? He played a lot of hockey, and he played it all running on Red Bull, right? I mean, obviously, I don't know if he drinks Red Bull, but you understand what I'm saying there. And I think that this is a smart decision to just let him take a deep breath. Now, look, 2 games is enough. I know he's going to play tonight. I believe we saw he's in tonight. Drysdale and Frost are coming out. Him and Eric Johnson Poling are coming back in. But to me, this is development. I think this is smart. I really do. I think they're doing it with Will Smith out in San Jose, who struggled at 5-on-5 a little bit. And struggle might not be the right word. They're just surviving. It's not good for a teenager to just survive. The NHL is not a development league. Okay, that's what the American League is for. That's what college and CHL is for, development, right? The USHL. So I'm on board with this. I think this is smart. I think the Flyers could message it differently, like other teams are. Like they're calling it for Will Smith a development day. He didn't play last night against New Jersey, and I think maybe they just change the terminology of it. And everybody backs off. The last thing I want to say, and I know I'm being long-winded here, but this is a passionate topic, right? Because I was going at it with people on Twitter. You can learn the game in the NHL in the press box. It's different than watching film with a coach. It's sitting up top. The game is very slow. You see spacing. You see tendencies. You see positions. You see forechecks, everything like that. Let me tell you something. My entire NHL career, okay, was spent in the press box. I was a healthy scratch in the National Hockey League close to 45 times when you really add it up over the course of the 4 years that I played, stayed here in North America to play in the American League. I felt like I did learn every night in the National Hockey League sitting upstairs. Like, oh, this works. This doesn't work. So I'm a believer in it, Tyler. I'm a believer in it. I know that was long. I hope I'm not too out of line with it.
Yeah, Stephen Ellis is in the chat too. I'm okay with Michkov sitting at times, young kid who had to make the big step up from the KHL. It's okay for him to get an overhead view of everything and learn. And yeah, maybe it is just a PR thing a little bit, but Torts is never going to be a guy to handle him with kid gloves, right? Which is kind of the other side of this too. But I'm outnumbered, I guess, if you and Stephen Ellis are not on my side. So as the host of the show, that means I'm going to pivot off this topic so I don't dig myself into any deeper of a hole. And we'll get to our weekend warrior. Like I said, we're going to get to the all 32 in a couple of minutes here. But my weekend warrior, Colby, I'm going to go first because mine's pretty quick here, and it's Bowen Byram out in Buffalo. The Sabres have been on an absolute roller coaster this year. As you can see, Byram averaging 21.55 on the year, but played over 32 minutes in the team's win over the weekend. They took down the Calgary Flames in overtime, but Byram, this Sabres defense, I think, has to be the driver for this team. I think there are legitimate question marks about the offense, but the Sabres have now won 3 in a row as the roller coaster season continues on for them. But I wanted to give some love to Byram, who's up on the top pairing with Rasmus Dahlin, and those two are getting results for the Sabres, even though they're taking really, really tough matchups on. And I think those two together have the potential to be the next Hughes Hronek, the next Makar and Taves. Like, I think they can be one of the best pairings in the NHL. So I wanted to give Bowen Byram some love, and a trade him for Middlestat that, again, I think Buffalo maybe got the better player here, but when you look at Colorado's offense, that might actually be a true win-win.
Yeah, I mean, Middlestat has definitely looked more comfortable there this year, and Byram was dying for this opportunity to go actually play somewhere in a top 4. So, hey, good for him, but he's got to do it for a little bit of a longer period of time to really convince us that this is the new norm.
Your weekend warrior, back to Hall of Fame weekend.
It's Jeremy Roenick, right back up to what made him so great. We know the highlights, we know all the spitting his teeth out on the bench, but this is the part for me that just has separated this guy, his entertainment factor. JR was never afraid to understand that the game of hockey is all about the fans. He came on Morning Cup of Hockey this summer, and all he could talk about was his passion for the fans, why he did what he did for the fans. And you see at the Legends game last night at Scotiabank Arena, right back up to his old tricks, entertaining everyone, dancing around. I'm so happy for him. Not only a Hall of Fame hockey player, but he's a Hall of Fame person, a guy who I've spent a lot of time with, Tyler, in my life away from the game of hockey. And there are not many people that I love more in this game. So he's my weekend warrior for putting on a show like always.
Yeah, he has a great story as well. In his personal life, I know they did a great feature on TSN about him that I enjoyed over the weekend. Let's continue along here with the show. Get to the big segment. It's the All 32. Always a pleasure to welcome James Nichols into the show. He covers the New Jersey Devils for NJ Hockey Now. And what an interesting team what an interesting start to the year for this Devils team, James. They're top in the Metro, but they came into the year, as weird as it was after a season where they missed the playoffs, as one of the top betting odds favorites to win the Stanley Cup. So they're top in the Metro. And I'll ask you, have they looked like a Stanley Cup contender through 1 month?
Tough question. But it's interesting. I think that they definitely look a lot better. I think they're definitely a playoff team. But I still think that they're trying to figure out exactly who they are and what kind of team they want to be. It's starting to come together now as we're getting closer to game 20. The Sheldon Keefe system is starting to become more comfortable. But there is a little bit of a fatigue factor, I think, that's setting in, just because of how early they started, and they've had a bit of tough travel with going to Prague, and then another long Western Canada road trip that happened last week, and they're actually going on another one starting today. So it's not too far. They're just going to Florida, but they have admitted the travel has been a little bit tough to deal with in the fatigue sense, but things are trending in a good direction. I think that they're finally starting to understand the system that they're expected to play. And I don't know if you've seen Jack Hughes over the last couple of games, but he's definitely back. So things are looking up.
James, you used the word system a couple of times in that answer. So I'm just going to build off of that and ask you, what big differences have you seen, from last year's team to this Sheldon Keefe coach team when it comes to system or structure? I know there's a lot of different ways you can phrase it, but what's jumped out at you the most?
Yeah, it's funny enough, it's relatively the same. It's just really sharpening the fine details. And what Sheldon Keefe has preached this year for the most part has been just do everything faster, get to the puck faster, win your puck battles faster, and just sprint to every battle, whether that's retrieving the puck or dumping it in and chasing it. However that looks, he just wants everybody to do everything a little bit faster. So it makes for very intense practices. When they do get to practice, again, the travel has been so crazy, but it's relatively the same. High skill, high rush team. That can score at the drop of a dime on the rush. But at the same time, he's also, introducing a lot of physicality. And, that happened with the players they acquired too, your Paul Cotters and your Brendan Dillons. But it's again, primarily just a high skill team on the rush who's now also adding that physical element and defending much better.
I wanted to ask you a bit about the captain, Nico Hischier, as someone who's just kind of looking at the stats and the game logs for this Devils team. I'm sitting here going, man, he's already a third of a way to his career high in goals. He's got 10 in 18 games. Career high is 31. I know he hasn't scored in 5 games here. And I guess what I want to know is this a different Nico Hischier this year, or was that just a little early season shooting percentage heater where a bunch of bounces went his way? Is it just a heater, or is he a goal scorer now?
Yeah, I think that he wasn't going to shoot 23%. That was the last I checked the whole season. So you're starting to see that come back down to earth a bit. But overall, I do think he's had to take a little bit less responsibility as a whole, just because of his line mates. Now he's playing regularly with Dawson Mercer, who does help him defensively. And Timo Meyer is no slouch in that department either. He's been excellent in all 3 zones for that line. So it's a really it's a really strong line both ways, and that's helped him out a lot. They've been able to maybe do a little bit more of the dirty work, and he does have a really good shot. He can be a goal scorer, and that 30 goal season he had was no fluke. So it would not be a surprise to see him do it again. However, he was on like a 63 goal pace like a week ago, so I don't think that that's going to end up being the way it is. But it shouldn't be a surprise to see him score another 30-35 goals this year, and absolutely be a contender for that Selke with his game on the defensive side of the puck.
Do they need anything? Like, obviously, it was such a busy offseason. You pick up Pesce, you pick up Dylan, you give up your first round pick to get Jacob Markstrom as well. I mean, you can go back to last year's deadline when they went and got Jake Allen, too. Do you think GM Tom Fitzgerald will get up to anything over the next few months here during the season, or is this roster just kind of set?
Yeah, it's funny. I think that they've flipped needs. Last year it was goaltending and defense. This year I think it's the forward group. They lost Tyler Toffoli. They traded him at the deadline. They didn't necessarily replace him, right? You see down at the bottom there, they got Thomas Tatar, but he's not going to necessarily replace that 35 goal pace that Toffoli left, right? And the expectation is a guy like Dawson Mercer or Timo Meyer are going to fill that role. And Meyer has done his part. Mercer's starting to come on a little bit better, but he's not necessarily filling the net as much as they may have hoped. So, in terms of forwards, I think they potentially would want to look for a guy who's a sniper, right? Somebody who could just change the game at the snap of a wrist. And I'm not exactly sure what form that comes in. I look at guys like maybe Frank Vetrano, depending on the direction the Islanders want to go, and a guy like Brock Nelson. Those would be some interesting guys. So that's the first thing that comes to mind. And the second thing that comes to mind, and I'm actually going to be publishing this later today. I'm not thrilled with their fourth line right now. Obviously, they have some injuries to Curtis Lazar, Nathan Bastian, but it's not sustainable for them to roll out Curtis McDermott 6 minutes a night and Justin Dowling 7 minutes a night. I mean, honestly, that's hurting Thomas Tatar, who's also only getting about 7 minutes a night. So they're going to need more from their fourth line. I wonder if they go out and acquire some depth, whether that be through waivers or a trade, or maybe make a recall for someone like Shane Bowers, who I think would be a really good fit on that fourth line at center.
James, as always, man, really appreciate your time. You can find his work at NJ Hockey Now. Find him on Twitter at James Nichols NHL. Thanks for doing this.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
Moving along to our daily face-off inbox question, hashtag askdfo. The Nashville Predators making some news over the weekend. They put Dante Fabro on waivers. Joe wants to know if you think this was the right move by the Preds to send a message and try to wake up that team, or was it not worth losing a 26-year-old defenseman?
I think the reason they did this was because he's making $2.5 million, and they've got Mark Delgado kind of waiting in the wings to take that third pair spot and makes a fraction of that. And we know about the big spending that they made this summer. So they're probably looking for some cap savings and an opportunity to free some things up. I don't like the way Barry Trotz has operated over the last couple of weeks. I thought his comments about starting the rebuild were dumb. They to me, they were just hot air, because that's not realistic when you look at the roster and you look at the no movement clauses and the years and the dollars committed. So honestly, the Nashville Predators are a dumpster fire and a disaster right now.
Natty is in. Do you think Marty St. Louis is on the hot seat? This actually might be a bigger conversation we have tomorrow on the show about coaches on the hot seat, but what do you think of St. Louis?
I do not believe he's on the hot seat. Knowing Jeff Gorton the way that I do, knowing the relationships there between him, Ken Hughes, Marty St. Louis, knowing where they're at in their rebuild, I think that's just all noise that's coming from fan and writer creation.
dead last in the Atlantic, but I do think I agree with you. I think they know what the process is here in Montreal, and they're not going to get too antsy over a bad start to the season or anything like that.
They want Hagens.
Nah, there you go. There's also that. Let's move along to our daily bets, brought to you by Bet365, the largest sports betting platform globally. Download the app today and use the promo code NATION to get in on a huge range of markets. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Just one play for me today. Listen, I know the Carolina Hurricanes were on that big 8-game heater, but that heater is over, and I don't think they should be home or road favorites against the Vegas Golden Knights. I love Vegas. A little home dog action here at plus 120. Vegas is a perfect 8-0 at T-Mobile so far this season, and I think they keep that rolling against Carolina, who's got to go a handful of time zones across the continent for this matchup. Give me Vegas plus 120. Love the home dog price tag you're getting there, and that's my only play for the night, although I am somewhat tempted to fade the Montreal Canadiens and go with the Buffalo Sabres to continue their heater. Buffalo hosts Montreal. I think that puck is about to drop in about 8 minutes here. Cole, we get a little afternoon hockey today. That's always nice.
You know me, love those early games. Get Edmonton on at 1 o'clock every day. I'll be happy.
Yeah, that's fair. Let's wrap up the show with a little bit of garbage time and a little heartwarming moment from over the weekend, as Jeremy Swayman and Linus Ullmark got to have their little bromance reuniting moment, and they had a little hug at center ice, posed for a nice picture there as well. They obviously, again, the split up this summer, if you want to call it that, because they had to move Ullmark to pay Swayman. They eventually did pay Swayman, and now Swayman's not off to that hot of a start, and Ullmark's not off to that hot of a start in Ottawa either. Colby, they miss each other.
They were hugging it out, and you know what Ullmark said? Thanks for helping me get to $8.25 million a year, because you being stubborn made me more money. So thanks, buddy. Dinner on me. We'll see what happens. We let's revisit this in 6 months to know who made the right decision in goal.
Yeah, speaking of goaltending, we're going to have Carter Hutton on the show tomorrow. We're going to dig into a few goalie headlines from around the league when we return tomorrow at noon Eastern. Colby, you're back tomorrow as well. It's me and
I'm
you
back.
for
You got me Monday, Tuesday this week, and it's always a happy way to start my week. I get to cleanse myself of John Lazarus, and I get to spend some time with someone I actually enjoy being on air with.
I was going to say you're too nice to me, but you're really just too mean to Johnny. That's a wrap on today's edition of the show. Colby and I will be back tomorrow at noon Eastern. Enjoy the hockey today. We'll chat with you on Tuesday. What's up, hockey fans? If you enjoyed that video, then you're going to want to hit the subscribe button to not miss any of our content, from daily live shows with Frank Saravalli to analysis from former NHLers to exclusive interviews with some of the biggest names in the hockey world on Frankly Speaking. You're going to want to hit that subscribe button and stay up to date with everything going on in the hockey world.